Welcome to the past, where you'll get information related to sports, video games, technology, music, and our all-time favorite ass of the week. What is good? What's going on, y'all? This is episode 198 of The Past. I'm your host, BT. I hope everyone's doing well this morning, this afternoon, this day, whenever you're listening to the show. I'm not going to really give y'all a lot of extra fluff and information. I will say that this is a small show, but this is a packed show, and you'll see what I mean when we talk about it. So as always, when we start off, I always give you the my positive vibe or my positive flow, which is an angel number, which is, since we're on episode 198, it's going to be for angel number 198. Angel number 198 says that you should allow these higher powers to lead you in order for you to find the purpose of your life. Be vigilant and work on your goals with the knowledge that what you do will be reflected on you in the future. The angels promise to support your hard work. They confirm to you that the energy you need will come in full force once you put your efforts in the right direction. The angel number 198 has 3 digits, namely 1, 9, and 8. Number 1 exemplifies new opportunities to start out fresh. It is the second chance to achieve great things and attain your destiny. You do not just happen, you have a destiny to fulfill, and you are the only one in charge of its accomplishment. Number 1 embodies traits like steadfastness, willpower, decisiveness, and hard work. If you possess these traits, you are likely to succeed in creating new ventures for yourself. Number 9 denotes the end of certain circumstances. When you desire to venture into new projects, you must let go of some aspects that bring you down. Your angel number's desire is that you come alive and become more aware of the fact that you were made for so much more. Once you realize this, you will start to identify aspects of your life that do not match your destiny. You will experience the need to weed out these aspects so as to create more room for greater things that are about to happen in your life. Number 8 is the number that stands for wisdom, reliability, and dependability. Decisions concerning your destiny require divine wisdom. Angel number 198 says you do not want to rule out something in your life, while indeed it was meant to be a critical contribution to your destiny. Pray to the angels for wisdom. Speak with God and ask that only He speaks with you through His guides. Meditate and seek a deep, fulfilling relationship with God. All right. So I'm going to chop into this really, really, really simple and really, really direct. When it comes to number 1, as far as new ventures and new things, that is spot on for me personally right now. I'm not going to really give a lot of details or information within the show. I will just say that a new chapter started for me. A lot of my friends who personally know me did kind of see the announcement or the discussion addressed socially, which I normally wouldn't do that. But I kind of made it as a, hey, here's what I'm doing. And I'm not really making like a big scene about it. Normally, most cases, I would change pictures and modify things according to what is coming or what has happened. Now I'm just kind of like, all right, once it occurs and everyone knows. And it's kind of also like me adding another staple or another transition into my routine. Lately, and I've been a huge advocate or a huge voice piece about this. I'm really strong and striving harder on just calm, peace, calamity, like limited drama, limited nonsense. And letting go or ending certain things is kind of important to that. You have to want and go for much more. And the last couple of days has been me realizing that there's more that I'm capable of doing that others may or may not realize, but it's a matter of me exposing it and giving it the proper attention or effort or whatever. And that's been what I've been able to see, and I don't mind it one bit. All I can say is that it's just more in store. Before I go into our topics this week, I do want to share, or I do want to personally say thank you to Ashley and Jazz, Ash and Jazz on their show. They're doing Soul Gab, which is on Anchor. I will be sure to put the link for their podcast, as well as the link that I was able to be a special guest on in the show notes, because that was a show that was overdue, but it was also beneficial to have in the circumstances, strictly because not often do you get people to come together and talk about topics that most people talk about, but the way we went into it, it was just a much different flow. And I will say that I love it. I mean, I valued it and cherished it for what it's worth. So thank y'all for having me on the, I said it on the show. I'll say it again on my show. Thank y'all for having me as a guest. I definitely do want to come back again and do another show soon. So once we, get things in line, and once I get my routine in line, then I'll definitely be looking forward to making that happen. So as I do, I share with you all, just like I do the Angel number, we are talking about the big three. I'm not this week going to be making any JBA references, because I've been able to push back on some things, just learning to keep it simple. But the big three, we just went through another week of matches. The three-headed monsters are a force to be reckoned with. That is the nicest way to put it. Jamario Moon is the new star. It kind of was the three-headed monsters had an interesting scenario, because here it is, Rashard Lewis got hurt a couple weeks ago, and the question becomes, all right, well, who do we rely on? Because if you really look at it, Quintel Woods is a good scorer, but he's not really a go-to guy. Kwame Brown's not really been a factor. Reggie Evans is mainly kind of the gritty, dirty player to kind of be physical on the block. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf has been able to kind of have his flashes, but, I mean, we have to acknowledge it for what it is. Rauf is not the young Rauf that we remember, or Chris Jackson, for those who remember him when he was in Denver. So, and also Salim Stoudemire has been, key to their lineup as well. So with having those guys kind of be in place, and Jamario Moon coming in as an added piece, helps them out a lot. The trilogy lost a very tough game against Power, which now puts them in a very struggling position. I believe it's only two teams remaining that have one win. And I believe it's Trilogy and Ghost. And let me rephrase that. Trilogy and Ball Hogs both are 1-4. Ghost Ball still has yet to win their first win. They played against Tri-State. Tri-State, it was a blowout from start to finish. There's no pretty acute way to put it. Looking at the box score, the stats. Ricky Davis was Ricky Davis. Bibby didn't play. Ivan Johnson did play, but wasn't really much of a factor. Mario West and Boozer kind of did their best foot, gave their best effort. David Hawkins is going to be the guy that people need to watch out for with Tri-State. Because, even with them losing the game to three-headed monsters, David Hawkins is going to step up and really give you production on that team. And he's one of their starters. Robert Height had a bit of a quiet game in this matchup. Killer Threes were able to get over their hump. They played against the Ball Hogs, and they were able to win 50-38. The Ball Hogs are a tough team to digest, and I know that's a strange way to say it, but Josh Childress will show up one game, then he'll disappear another game. Like I said, that's one of the reasons why they're 1-4. Killer Threes were able to get there. Like I said, they got their second win of the season, so that's big for them. And finally, Trilogy played against Power. Trilogy is in that tough spot right now. McCants and Harrington are doing their part. They just need help from their other role players. Kenya Martin didn't play, and Al Thornton didn't play as well. And with Power, Catino Mobley is being Catino Mobley. So you have four guys in double figures between Quentin Richardson, Glenn Davis, Catino Mobley, and Corey Maggette who led the team with 13, despite McCants having 17 in the game. So those are stats in our breakdown for the league. And as I mentioned, the Three-Headed Monsters are still the only undefeated team. Tri-State and Power both are 4-1. Both of their losses came to the Three-Headed Monsters. Three's Company, like I said, they gave Three-Headed Monsters a good match, but it was, Three-Headed Monsters kind of been on a run. Three-Headed Monsters, when they played Trilogy, that was one of Trilogy's losses. So we'll just be keeping an eye out for that. And like I said, we're only on we just finished week 5, so week 6 will be starting on Friday. So keep an eye out for that, for those games on Fox this Friday. So the big story, and it's not, I'm kind of late breaking the story on my podcast, but the story will circulate and be discussed or addressed. But a trade did occur that people expected but didn't expect, and I'll explain why. So Kawhi Leonard was traded. There was discussion of whether he would or wouldn't be traded. Kawhi wanted to go to LA. San Antonio was not going to allow him to go to LA for 2 reasons. One, he would be in the Western Conference, which means you're likely to see them 3, if not 4 times during the season. And 2, if you're going to make that type of a trade or release a player of that regard, there would have to be something of value to get in an LA trade, which is nothing against LA. There weren't any pieces to be able to be traded to get a trade in place to get Kawhi to LA and feel like they gained something from making that trade, which is why San Antonio didn't do that trade. So in the end, he ended up going to the Toronto Raptors, which there's a lot of indifferent feelings about this trade. So I'll give the story a little bit of buzz, and then we'll kind of break it down. So the Toronto Raptors took the biggest gamble in franchise history by completing a trade with the San Antonio Spurs for superstar forward Kawhi Leonard. The Raptors and Spurs trade lands Leonard in Canada and sends the all-star guard DeMar DeRozan to San Antonio as his replacement. The Spurs will get Jakob Poeltl, while the Raptors get Danny Green. Leonard was limited to 9 games last season by a quadriceps injury and can leave the Raptors in free agency next summer. Toronto posted a franchise record 59 wins last season, but fired coach Dwayne Casey, who was later named NBA's Coach of the Year in a balloting by both news media members and his peers. After a humbling second-round sweep inflicted by the LeBron James-led Cleveland Cavaliers. And as we know, LeBron's obviously not in Cleveland anymore. League-wide buzz around the Raptors jumping into the Leonard trade sweepstakes has been building for the past week. The deal sets up a potentially awkward reunion for Leonard and Spurs coach Greg Popovich next week in Las Vegas at a USA Basketball minicamp, which is scheduled to be Popovich's formal debut as successor to Duke's Mike Krzyzewski as head coach of the team. USA Leonard is among a group of 35 players who have been invited to the camp. They go into a little bit more information. Teams interested in training for Leonard has been consistently told for weeks that the player has no interest in signing anywhere but LA, either the Lakers or the Clippers, when he becomes a free agent in July of 2019. Trading for Leonard anyway is thus a huge dice roll for Toronto's team president. And like I said, they just give more information about the trade. First and foremost, and I'm not a speaker or a person to give any input about this, but I'll say it and tell it like it is. DeMar DeRozan was done pretty dirty in this trade. And the reason I say he was done dirty was because they made the trade and it was almost as if there wasn't any discussion made with DeRozan beforehand that there's a possibility you might be traded. The impression that he had was that things were good with Toronto. And you think about it. The Six has been what he knows for his entire career. You look at it, he was a guy who's from Cali. He played ball at USC. When he got to USC, it was evident he wasn't going to stay because he kind of was in that one and done mindset back then. And so going into the NBA, Toronto was a new home, a new start. And it pretty much in Toronto, he's had a very inclining year. The decline that a lot of people look at is the playoff series. And I'll be honest, in the East, and you're kind of in a no-win situation regardless of how you look at it. If you're in the West, you have Golden State, you have Houston, you have now LA in a sense. You had San Antonio at one point. So you had multiple teams that can give you a threat or be a challenge in your conference or in your division. On the East, your conference battle was Cleveland. And before Cleveland, it was Miami when LeBron was in Miami. Now, a lot of teams who are in the East look at it as, hey, LeBron's going to the West. He can fight it out with those other teams. And now we can kind of make it a level playing field for us in a sense. Now, it's how you look at it or how you interpret it as to whether that's really true or not. The reason that's mentioned or stated is because the Cavaliers are starting over. The Celtics still have Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. Toronto now we see is going to be starting over. It's going to be a more interesting lineup and I feel like Danny Green will likely be starting. So you have Green, Leonard, and Kyle Lowry. I'm going to be 100% blunt in saying this. Kyle Lowry is one of the toughest point guards to analyze or to break down when it comes to basketball, because him and DeMar DeRozan were making the playoffs. We're making all-star appearances numerous times, and all-star appearances look great. NBA playoff appearances look great. Conference finals look dope, but not making the finals is where the questions come into play. And that's the biggest thing that I can look at with DeRozan as a Raptor that was tough to see. Now, will the culture change for him in San Antonio? It's a little different now because, number one, obviously, Leonard's gone. Number two, Parker's gone. Number three, you're in the post-Tim Duncan era. And it's something that you don't want to acknowledge, but you have to acknowledge as a fan of the game. Ginobili has a year left, if that. And most of the guys who are on this roster, I would personally say, I don't think any of them were on any of the championship runs that the Spurs have made. So you have all of these pieces that you're trying to put together. You have LaMarcus Aldridge. You have, like I said, you have Aldridge, you have Gasol. You have quite a few players who are still kind of trying to settle themselves and get into that place of winning. But it's still the Western Conference. So DeRozan going to this team could be an added piece. Rudy Gay, I think he's coming up towards his 10 or 11 year point in the league, which you would be surprised to realize. But then also health hasn't been on his side either. So I'm not going to sit here and take San Antonio out of the equation, but I also don't have them as a high favorite with getting him to say that that's going to be the solution. Now, one other piece that's mentioned or that's part of this is the free agency situation. DeRozan is going to be in San Antonio for a couple years. Could be, unless the factor comes in of if the Spurs are open to trading him, they would have to take his contract and the years that come with the contract. Then also on the other side of it, you have Kawhi, this is a 1 year thing. The 1 year situation is intense because I'm looking at how the salary cap is going to play into this next season, along with how contracts could be potential max contracts. Kawhi never wanted a max contract in San Antonio. I don't think it had anything to do with the team. I don't think it had anything to do with the environment. I just don't think he wanted to be a Spur. Like I said, it could be due to location, but I think he had worn out his welcome and he was kind of tired of it. The other side of it too, and I'm gonna watch this story and then go to the next story, is maybe I'm just not seeing it, But all of the stories that have come out have been from sources. Nothing has been us personally seeing Kawhi say anything. Like, since he's gotten to Toronto, unless he did a press conference or a press release and it just didn't get a lot of media attention, all of these things just kind of came and went as far as this trade or this transaction or occurrence. So that's how I feel about it. I mean, Kawhi is a good player. Do I feel like he's going to make the All-Star team this year? He's in Toronto. If he has a good season in Toronto, the fans are going to vote for him. But it's also going to be, is Kawhi actually going to play this year? Because he may not play any games, or he may decide to play a couple games just to stay in shape, but put his plan in place of, I want out, I'm going to LA. And Toronto really, I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, his contract is he's an unrestricted free agent. So yeah, he'll be a free. They don't say whether he's restricted or unrestricted, but he'll be a free agent. Most players who are on teams have unrestricted free agent status, because if you're restricted, a team can match your offer, which it's not going to be likely that occurs. So like I said, we'll kind of be keeping our eyes on, his first couple games and how he looks, and breaking down if this is really the right chemistry or if it's just a fly-by-night type of situation. Now, I don't have this story listed, but I'll go ahead and get into it as well, because it was a timeline of events that occurred, and it was just, you kind of saw it coming. Dwight Howard was let go by Charlotte. And when let go, let me rephrase that. Charlotte pulled the trigger to make a trade with Brooklyn. Brooklyn was able to agree with the trade. It sent Dwight Howard to Brooklyn. Brooklyn then bought out his contract, said, all right, we'll let you go. He then was selected and picked up by the Wizards. He did a funny snippet. I don't have it with me directly, but he did make a discussion or kind of lighten the mood as far as the teams he's played for between Orlando, LA, Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte. He didn't talk about Brooklyn because he really didn't play for him. And now he's a Wizard. So hopefully having that big man presence will be helpful along, with factoring in that Gortat was released from the Wizards a couple of weeks ago. All right. Carmelo Anthony is now a Houston Rocket. First and foremost, I'm taking my Rocket hat off. I'm taking my fan hat off. But I'm going to be 100% honest. This is a trade, or this is a deal that is a interesting but odd trade. Carmelo's 34. Let's put that in the mix first and foremost. In NBA years, that's not really young. He will be getting what they consider the veteran minimum for 1 year, and around about $2.5 million. He will also receive his $27.9 million salary in full once he's released by Atlanta. He met with Houston while he was at the Summer League. And this push has been kind of going on since last year with getting Carmelo to Houston. The initial push was Carmelo was they initially pushed for this last year. As we all know, he went to Oklahoma. The Oklahoma trifecta didn't work because Paul George was getting his, Russell Westbrook was getting his, Carmelo wasn't. If Carmelo were to go to a team, Carmelo going to a team meant he would be a starter. He wasn't going to play, and he's, this was mentioned, it was in multiple stories. He was not looking to be a star. I mean, he wasn't looking to go to a team to come off the bench. If anybody picked him up in that regard, he didn't want that option. So that's why this move works for him. Like I said, I'm going to say this because I don't want it to be unnoticed or ignored. Carmelo is a very ball-dominant player. I talk about this on numerous podcasts as a sports fan and as a general verbiage of just watching the game. There's nothing wrong with being a ball dominant player, but the issue of the conflict that comes into play is if we're having a 24-second shot, and this, you have James Harden, who's a ball dominant player. You have Chris Paul, who's a good point guard distributor, and you have Carmelo that's going to take off certain seconds off the clock. You only got 24 seconds. What's going to happen? How does this work out? Where will the focus lie within this team? The advantage too is Mike D'Antoni coached Carmelo before. So it's kind of I know what to expect, and I kind of have an idea of what I'm working with in him coming to the team. The flip side of it is you just have to make sure that is how will it come together chemistry wise. And also how I'm looking at it is, will Carmelo be coming with the focus of winning, or is Carmelo just there for a paycheck? And that's almost, I feel bad comparing this as such, but it's kind of almost like a person working. Are you coming to this team, like LeBron going to LA, there's indifferent views of whether he's coming to win a championship. The team he has now, he's won with much worse teams. The only difference is there aren't any quote unquote all-stars around him. If you really look at the team that LA has, and I know I'm going to LA, but spinning it to the Houston team. Houston is interesting too because Chris Paul is in a tough spot. Chris Paul is one of your best point guards in the NBA. But because of how stacked in guards the West is, or just how stacked the NBA is, Chris Paul doesn't get that nod of being an all-star, and or he's not really in that conversation of one of the best point guards in the NBA. Because how players are measured is by winning, by consistent playoff appearances, by championships, by those tangibles. And sometimes, I'm not going to say all the time, sometimes that's unfair to the player. But that's my personal hot take of how I look at it. Carmelo coming to Houston is not going to guarantee a championship, bottom line. Same with Kawhi and DeRozan. Those two trades were done to just mainly get Kawhi off their books. If you go back last year, it was the exact same thing with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie wanted out. Kyrie didn't feel like being a Cav. Kyrie just won a championship, but he didn't feel like being a Cavalier. So what better thing to do than be your own man and do your own thing? And we saw how it worked out for them this year. And it would have, we can't say specifically because we really don't know, but Kyrie and LeBron battling in the finals, you would have got you got a 7-game series, granted, but I think Boston would have made it a more interesting series and not have it look like, well, yeah, we setting up for another finals again between Golden State and Cleveland. We are now having our first team to kind of a team has made attention get drawn to something that still shouldn't get as much attention as it has, but here we are. So there's a national anthem policy that's in place with the NFL. That policy has been placed on hold to kind of get things in a more stable place, thanks to Miami placing a policy behind what would happen if players do decide not to adhere to the rules of the policy. Hours after the Associated Press, this is an article from the Associated Press. The Associated Press reported that Miami Dolphins players who protest on the field during the anthem could be suspended up to 4 games under a team policy issued this week. The league and the players' union issued a joint statement late Thursday night saying the two sides are talking things out. The NFL NFLPA, though, through recent discussions, have been working on a resolution to the anthem issue. In order to allow this constructive dialogue to continue, we have come to a standstill agreement on the NFL's PA's grievance and on the NFL's anthem policy. No new rules relating to the anthem will be issued or enforced for the next several weeks while these confidential discussions are ongoing. The NFL and the NFLPA reflect the great values of America, which are repeatedly demonstrated by many players doing extraordinary work in communities across our country to promote equality, fairness, and justice. Our shared focus will remain on finding a solution to the anthem issue through mutual good faith commitments outside of litigation. The issue has dominated headlines over the last 2 seasons, caused division, and alienated some fans. I'm not gonna read the story in full detail because I'm gonna paraphrase a lot of what may be said here, but also be a little transparent and also just kind of tell it like it is. So a lot of fans have made it very clear that they are not going to support football due to this decision. Do I have a problem with that? Absolutely not. I've said this numerous times personally with my podcast, and I've said this as a whole. I can't say what a person is or isn't going to do based on what they are or aren't going to watch, but I know part of my content on my podcast is I talk about sports. Football is still a sport. Now, whether the sport of football is to the liking of those who are not fans of what the NFL is doing, I totally get it. But that doesn't mean that I'm personally going to take something out of my show to reduce content, especially if you really look at sports is kind of in this weird dry spell right now because baseball picked up a little bit thanks to Bryce Harper with the home run derby. And there were, we had activities, we had sports, we had summer league happen and came and went. WNBA is going on right now. The World Cup is done. We're waiting for football. So people are kind of on that. We're waiting for football, but I really don't want to watch football because I don't stand for what the NFL stands for when it comes to the policy related to the national anthem. So I'm going to say this, and I probably have said this before, and I'm just talking about it because it's part of this discussion. The NFL, people are mad with the NFL and how it's all presented and how it's addressed. But what's not being acknowledged is we don't even stand up and do the national anthem in our own house. Some people don't even like to do the Pledge of Allegiance when they're in school. So it's like this magnitude of what this all has caused is very heavy when it shouldn't be as heavy as it is, especially when no one understands what the issues are and why the players are taking a stand or taking a knee and making the choices that they've made. People who are watching the game who really aren't supporting the sport because of how the NFL is treating it, get it. And I got y'all. I'm 100% on board with your decision of not watching the sport. A lot of people are displeased with the NFL's rules on how if a player decides that they don't want to be out during the game or whatever the case may be, that there's a penalty behind it. And what's sad about it is all of this is just enforcing regulation within something that has never been regulated before. I talked about him earlier in the podcast, but I'll kind of put it into full circle now. When Chris Jackson, or at the time Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, did a similar situation with the NBA, it was almost as though the NBA shunned him out of the game due to his decision, because he was standing, he did different. I don't think he kneeled, but he mostly stand and he put his hands he put his hands towards his face and he prayed. But it's like, as a sport, sports don't want you to be bigger than their sport. I've gone into this before, and it's kind of gotten some silent treatment since then. It's been 2 years since Colin Kaepernick has played football. 2 years. And no one has been able to justify why he's not playing. Teams, the collusion case, I guess, is still active, but no attention has been given to the collusion case, because right now we're trying to play, what are we going to do with these guys who are taking a knee during the national anthem? And then what makes it even worse is that there's a engulfed amount of support in trying to make a president happy that you're not going to make happy. Trump has no input. Like, I'm saying this because it's just my personal observation, and it's just kind of how it is. Trump, I guarantee you, is not going to not one football game since he's been president. Even more amazing, and I think this has happened both years, if I'm remembering correctly, because I think this past Super Bowl would have been his first, if I got it right. But when they do normally how like the president speak during the Super Bowl, he didn't do that. We've had even with Bush, with Clinton, with all previous presidents, they've done that conversation before the Super Bowl. Trump is an indifferent media person with things like that. And I know I'm going into my political bag, which I normally don't do. But in this case, I'm just saying it and looking at it as, we're giving him passes for doing things, but then because he's doing so much in what he's dealing with, it's jumping into things that everyday people are into. The story came up a while back when LeBron was looking at free agency, and the first thing that came to mind was, hey, he should go to Washington, so that way he'll be close to Trump and can kind of go head to head with him on issues. Going head to head with somebody that's thick-headed is impossible. That's just my take. That's not any political one side or the other. That's just me being a transparent person and talking about it. This national anthem policy should not be as complicated as it is. If a person doesn't want to stand, they don't have to. If a person doesn't want to come out during the national anthem, they don't have to. If you just make it easy and just do the national, like you could literally, and Roger Goodell, if you're listening, I'm just going to say it like it is. If you really want to make this whole process easier, when the game is going on and they're all practicing and doing all their drills and stuff before the actual game, when it comes time for the countdown to be finished, let all the players go to the back. Everybody just go to the back, chill. Do like your last final rundown, discussion, talk, whatever. Let whoever's going to be at that game, whoever you got featuring for different at different stadiums, sing the national anthem. Once the anthem is done, players come back on the field. Situation resolved. No fines had to be dealt with. No conflict has to be dealt with. It makes it a much easier and much level playing field. Now, that's my take. They may have another way they want to do it. I personally don't know. I'm not going to say personally I don't care, because I do. I just feel like there has to be a uniform and more simpler way to do it than what they're doing right now. So that's my 2% or my take towards that story. The WNBA, and I'm gonna surprise people because I really haven't talked about the WNBA that much this year. But the WNBA did do their All-Star selections for the upcoming All-Star game. The WNBA did follow the same format as the NBA, which I love. They were able to get the two best players in the game to decide to select their team that they would have for the All-Star game. First and foremost, before we continue, I will share that this year, Maya Moore decided, because Maya Moore was selected as one of the captains, she chose not to be a captain and give it a more balanced option or player, other people to kind of give, those who, because the WNBA has a voice, but the WNBA has a voice that not everyone's open to listening to. But I feel like it should be heard, because whether people have their feelings or their thoughts about the game is 25 years old. Like, it's been going, and I'm sitting here, I would say it's about 20 years old, if not older, as far as like the longevity of the sport of the WNBA. So the two team captains were Della Dawn and Candace Parker. As far as their rosters go and their lineups, Della Dawn's team was Simone Augustus, Sue Bird, DeWanna Bonner, Sylvia Fowles, Brittany Griner, Kayla McBride, Brianna Stewart, Diana Taurasi, Christy Tolliver, and Asia Wilson. Props to Asia Wilson for making the All-Star team her rookie year. I would do round of applause, but based on my location, not able to do it. I probably could and get away with it, but I'm not going to take that chance. But yeah, Asia Wilson made the All-Star team her rookie year, which is big. Brianna Stewart, I believe this is her second year in the league, and she's been showing out for Seattle. As we get near the end of the regular season, I will be putting some WNBA stories in and talking about like playoff seedings and stuff like that. Parker, who was the MVP, so Della Dawn was the MVP of the WNBA back in 2015, and Parker, who was the WNBA MVP back in 2008 and 2013. Her lineup is Liz Cambridge, Tina Charles, Skylar Diggins-Smith, Chelsea Gray, Jewel Lloyd, Angel McCautry. Angel McCautry is one of the OGs of the league. I'm just going to tell it like it is. Maya Moore, Chine Ogwumike, Nanika Ogwumike, and Allie Quigley, which I think is good that she was able to get both sisters on the same team, because that's creative. So the teams will meet for the All-Star game, the 15th WNBA All-Star game on July the 28th, and the game will be held in Minneapolis. That's going to be at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. So this coming Saturday, if you have free time, you can definitely tune in and watch that game. I'll do my best to give some highlights and some information. If the game is on TV, well, obviously it'll be on TV if I'm not in the midst of watching a random video game tournament, I will definitely tune in. And they did the actual draft itself was done as a conference call. Let's see. On Friday, July 27th, the All-Star captains and head coaches will come together to create starting lineups, and the starters will be revealed on the 27th during the telecast. And that's kind of your rundown of the WNBA lineups. Looking at the listing, like I said, Brianna Stewart, this is her second year. Asia Wilson is the only rookie. This is her first selection. Sue Bird has the most selections within at 11. I think it's good that she was able to, Della Dawn was able to get Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, and Sue Bird all on the same team since they all went to UConn. Della Dawn this is her fifth All-Star. Simone Augustus is her eighth. Maya Moore, if I didn't mention Maya Moore, my bad. Maya Moore makes it in, this is her sixth. And Tina Charles is her sixth. And Candace Parker, this will be her fifth. And Candace Parker has the longest tenure in the WNBA at 10 years. Then they give kind of a breakdown of each player and mainly their stats and information of that sort. So that's everything we have for sports. I did, but I didn't expect sports to be that long. But when you got a couple stories, you kind of push it and let it flow. So those are our sports topics. Now we'll get into stuff. I don't have it as a tab, and I'm not. There's no big story behind it. But this weekend there were quite a couple of matches for the. Capcom had their pro tour at I think it was Versus event. They also did. They also had Defend the North in New York. There were multiple tournaments with Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5, Injustice, Dragon Ball Fighters, Tekken. So that all went on this weekend this past weekend, and it was good. I caught a couple matches here and there, but kind of mainly chilled. So we'll get in. We have like I said, we'll do a little bit of a music session a bit because there was some music I'll save that before we get to Ads of the Week. Our first story we have, and I am a big fan, and anyone who knows this about me will always know this in my queue. Sade is one of my top artists, if not my top artist. It's tough for me because it's being put in the position of saying Sade or Stevie Wonder. It's kind of a no-win situation, but I'm a Sade fan. And even more ironic was a couple weeks ago, I got schooled and taught as far as Sade as an artist. It's when you think of Sade, it's mainly Sade as well as the band. So it's kind of like you get a package deal. So she's working on a new album. Thanks to longtime, and this story is from Hypebeast. Thanks to longtime Sade collaborator Stuart Matthewman, we have confirmation of new music from the legendary R&B artist. In an interview, Matthewman confirms that we're working on a new album. When we're happy, then we'll let everyone else hear it. Having not released a record since 2010 Soldier of Love, Sade Adu and the rest of the band have earned a reputation as perfectionist content to let her hard work speak for herself. Sade is not interested in the fame or any of that other stuff, Matthewman affirms. She likes to put out art. The record company knows there's no point in nagging us or giving us deadlines. Most recently, Sade debuted her first new song in 7 years, which is called Flower in the Universe. If you've not heard Flower in the Universe, check it out. It kind of gives you a teaser of what could be coming. I think, in my personal opinion, when Flower of the Universe dropped, that was kind of like a lead-in of a possibility that an album was being worked on. There are two forms of Flower in the Universe. There's the no ID version, and then there's like a trackless version. I forgot what it's called, but it's like two different styles if you listen to it. It's the same song, but it's a different listen if you're a big, as I would call it, a big music snob. I'm not gonna lie, I'm ready because I love Sade. I want this. I don't think she's gonna disappoint with this album. It's not stated in the article. I'm stating it for you all. There's no release date. There's no album name as of right now. The main factor is she's working on an album, and I'm ready. We'll get into a little bit of music for a moment. We'll get away from music for a bit, and then this is a tech story to talk about. And this is an article that kind of reached my timeline, and I was like, I'm reading it and looking over it, and I was like, all right, let me just talk about it a little bit, because this is an experience that a lot of Twitch streamers go through. So I'm gonna read this article a little bit, and like I said, we'll just talk about it. When John Hofstad first descended into the virtual world of Dark Souls in 2013, his mission was to save a decaying world. Famed for its brutal and exacting gameplay, Dark Souls is a popular game to live stream. If you're going to die hundreds of times, you might as well perish in some digital company to lighten the mood. What Hofstad didn't know then was that this would be the start of an even more difficult journey to make connections with other people. Hofstad had been streaming to largely nobody for the last 5 years, and he's not alone in this pursuit. Twitch, the leading live streaming platform where people play games, make crafts, and showcase their day-to-day lives, attracts over 2 million broadcasters every month. The numbers grow each year, thanks in part to how easy it has become to live stream, and platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube also increasingly encourage people to share and watch live stories. With the push of a button on your game console or phone, you can share whatever you're doing at the exact moment with friends and strangers alike. The rise of popular and profitable influencers on platforms like YouTube and Twitch has also made the idea of being an online influencer aspirational. Some parents note that their children pretend to unbox toys to a non-existent audience, and teachers report that their students often say they want to pursue YouTubing as a career, but when seemingly everyone wants to record footage or live stream, who ends up watching the content? Starting a career on platforms like Twitch often means spending some time broadcasting to absolutely no one. Discoverability is an issue when you log into Twitch. The most visible people are those who already have a large following. While there are tools to find lesser known streamers, most people starting out without built-in audiences from other platforms or supportive friends and family end up starting at a big fat zero on their viewership counter. This lonely live stream purgatory can last anywhere from a few days, weeks, months, sometimes even years, depending on your luck. According to people who have gone through it, lacking an audience is one of the most demoralizing things you can experience online. It's kind of exhausting playing to an empty room day in and day out with no results. It's freaking hard. I'm not going to use profanity for this one. It's freaking hard to stay positive when doing this 5 days a week. When it feels like nobody drops by. I've come to a realization that streaming just isn't working for me. Been streaming on and off for 4+ years, and every time I come back, I go weeks where the majority of time I'm streaming to no one. These are all different articles, or those are different posts written by various people on Reddit. I'm gonna let you all read the rest of this article, and I'm gonna kind of give my hot take on this. So I've been in and out of recording on Twitch for, I guess you can say 3 years for the sake of the discussion. I can almost say 2 years because I recently just got a computer. Well, I've had a computer for a few years, and I did get I had a capture card, but didn't have any equipment to capture with. Streaming is easy, but getting people to enjoy what you stream is hard. And it's not hard because you're trying to get through the cracks of those who are the top streamers. It's a matter of one connection leading to another connection leading to another connection. If you're a streamer and you stream on Twitch a couple times a week, a couple times a month, but no one really knows that your stream exists in Twitch, or no one that's like a big streamer really has seen you stream, or to even add to that, if you're, let's say, you haven't gone to any local tournaments or local events or just major events in general and not gotten that personal exposure, then you're just trying your best to, as they call it, grind it. And you have to be creative and different in what you're doing compared to the hundreds of thousands of people who, to say it without saying it, are doing the same thing. It takes a toll on you, especially if you're going into it for the wrong reason. Now, I'm going to take it away from Twitch, and I always bring it back to this because it's important. I'm going to break it down for you from a podcast perspective. And I'll be 100% honest. Today's podcast was going to happen somehow, some way, one way or another. There was a personal and slight delay of getting that to be achieved. But eventually I caved in. I put my feelings aside and I really thought about it because of the consistency that I have had and that I am having with what I'm doing. It's bigger than me to do what I'm doing, but I also realize there are hundreds of people who are sitting in front of a microphone like I am, recording, editing, uploading, tagging, socializing, and the whole nine. And you have to kind of get that in, or get those people who know that you're doing it to realize what you're doing. I say all of that to say, if you know what your goal is and what you're doing with the streaming side of Twitch, then push towards that goal, but also network. Networking can help you a lot. The other side of it, and this is something that I was looking at even before I did today's show, with streaming, instead of going to the bigger platforms, start small. If you're expecting your streaming site or your streaming flow to stick out in YouTube, and there are multiple people who are doing YouTube streaming, you're already behind the 8 ball. 50,000 people streamed NBA 2K. I hate to say it, but it is what it is. A lot of people stream Street Fighter. A lot of people stream Mortal Kombat. A lot of people stream FIFA. But if you're not streaming FIFA in a way that, or any of the other games that I mentioned, in a way that doesn't stand out amongst the others, you're in a tight spot. So you have to know your game. You have to know your audience. It's almost like when you go on Twitch, like the last game that I personally would ever stream is Fortnite. Not even because I'm not good at it, because I suck at the game anyway, but because there are already 250,000 people watching Fortnite to begin with. And that's even before Ninja gets on. Like if you're streaming Fortnite and Ninja already has 100,000 people watching Fortnite, you only can talk in his stream or in his chat by subscribing. You're gonna, because some people come to his stream and it ain't even about them going to lurk. They just got it playing as just background music. I'll say this and then I'm gonna go on a music session and close out with our ass of the week. I bought a shirt. I wear the shirt very frequently. Every so often, it's kind of almost like my personal gaming reminder. It shows a heart with a 0, an eye with a 0, and I can't think what the third image is, but they all have zeros beside them. And the message on the shirt says, stream like nobody's watching. You're gonna have to expect that when first streaming, or even if you consistently stream, that you're gonna have some zeros come in the mix. But the other side of it too is you have to find ways to let others know that you are streaming. Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. Use those resources while also letting word of mouth be your best friend as well. That's my hot take. That's something that I'm even willing to give myself advice on doing, because that you have to start somewhere to get somewhere. And I'll just leave it at that. All right, like I said, I'm going to get to Ass of the Week in a moment. I do want to talk about Music Sesh. First and foremost, I did do a bit of a deep dive into the Wiz Khalifa album, and I was able to give some input on a couple of songs that I liked and some albums that really stood out for me, that I was able to, a couple of tracks that I really enjoyed off of the Wiz Khalifa album. From what I was able to listen to, and I mentioned it there and I'll mention it here again. Let me make sure I'm giving the correct names. Reach for the Stars was one of my favorite tracks. Be Okay was one that I was able to listen to. All of a Sudden, Bootsy Bellows, and Rolling Papers 2. Those are my 5. I don't have them in like a specific order, but those are the 5 tracks that I was able to enjoy from this album consistently. As a listener of music, you have to get music you have to get music how it fits and or moves you. Looking at albums and music that dropped Friday, there wasn't really much that stood out that I saw as, okay, I definitely want to get this album and get this song. So I didn't really mess with too much. I did listen to the internet. If you have not listened to Hive Mind by the internet, it's 13 tracks, but it's a great 13 tracks. I'll just leave it at that. And I'm sitting here thinking about it now. I need to share it with someone because I have a friend of mine who's kind of like my music connection that I make it. I usually make it my goal to like make sure she's in the loop and in the know on music because I'm always finding new music. And then I have someone who, my friend Ashley, who had me on her show that I talked about earlier, she will send me some stuff to listen to, and I'm like, all right, let me check this out. And one thing leads to another. I'm like, all right, I got a new artist or a new album to kind of add to the mix. So the internet, that's kind of gonna be my music session. Listen, my album, I guess you can call that my album recommendation. That'll be my album recommendation for this week. All right. My personal favorite part of the show that I love doing, but I hate doing. Actually, I don't hate doing it. I love doing this because sometimes you have to look at these stories and really make sure that this actually happened until you realize that it did happen. So a man was called to, and this happened in Virginia to make it even worse. The police were called to a gym, like a pickup game gym facility, because someone set a hard pick. Anyone who knows basketball, if you're playing defense against somebody, at times you're gonna get a pick. Somebody may call a pick, and if the pick comes up, they stand there and they try their best, if anything, not to move. Well, the person who had the pick set on them was upset because it hurt, I guess. I don't know. But the police were called during a pickup game after getting knocked down to the floor by a hard pick in the LA Fitness in Sterling, Virginia. Pictured in the tweet itself, you see a man with his hands on his shoulders wearing the, as I call them, the Allen Iverson sleeves in a fatigue style at that. And the man who set the screen, who is on the opposite side of him, let me make sure I got it. Pictured in the perfect tweet below are the police officer, the man who set the screen, which is the one that has on the double shooting sleeves like Allen Iverson, and the man who was knocked down by the screen, who is on the opposite side of him with his arms folded. He looks a little shorter, and I guess he got upset. Twitter user Togs, who first shared the image, elaborated in a thread. Everybody at the gym and dude in the black with hands folded falls from a hard pick. He gets up, tells everyone he's going to call the police, and walks out, leaving everyone in the gym confused. We thought he was joking till we saw Buddy at the front desk on the phone really calling the police. Sobbing emoji. Shooting Sleeves was not the one who called the police. He was the screener, not the screenee. So that means he was the one who set the screen. Cop finally comes and brings them out the gym to talk like it was an elementary school fight. You could tell he was blown because his time was wasted. Cops leave, and we are still left wondering why. Thomas Mulaba, who's 28, told Deadspin he witnessed the lead up to the screen heard around the world while waiting for the next pickup game. He had pushed him in the back before, so he got hit with a hard screen at the top of the key and flew to the ground, got up and walked out the door. LOL. He went to the front desk and called the cop and waited for them. Then walked back in and sat down. Then there were interviews done by the person who was the bystander, who was a witness, and he interviewed other bystanders about this, and they showed a video. Do you know? And then it continues and says, "Do you know the guy in the shoot? Do you know the guy in the shooting sleeves, or the guy who got screamed so hard that he called law enforcement? Were you at the gym when it happened?" And they gave an update stating the police report for this assault can be read over the Huffington Post. The report backs up Mulaba's claim that the physicality was mutual. They admitted that they fouled each other while playing basketball. Neither wanted a report after I offered. Management gave Sub-J's one more chance to keep the game civil. If not, they will both be removed from the gym for the day. I provided management with my direct line in case there are after issues. Then there's another report from the game. In basketball court, suspect is still in the gym. Black male, tall, 6'4", long sleeves and headband. Caller is desk clerk. Victim is at front desk. Rescue refused. And then they show Deadspin then acquired a 911 call made on July the 18th. Then later on that night, they were able to acquire the body cam footage from the police who was dispatched to the gym. You can check that out on your own time. But this will be my closeout, because in 35 years of living, and I guess you can say 25 years of playing basketball, I've never seen a game get that intense where somebody has a screen set on them and they literally call the police. Or let alone not even calling police, run out the gym. Like, you can't go to a pickup game and not expect physicality. It's almost equivalent to playing soccer and the game gets physical, or you play physical during the game, but you don't want the physicality to be reciprocated. It has to go both ways. You have to have balance. Or even beyond that, it shouldn't be blown to the extent that it was. But yet, quote unquote, here we are. So I have a challenge, I guess you can say, as my closing for today. And that is to walk away. To end each day on a positive note. A lot of times we go through our day, we're frustrated, we're angry, we're upset, we're mad. And we go through so many emotions personally because by nature, it's just who we are. But what I'm challenging you to do today is, or at any point this week, is to find a moment of something that brings you joy or something that makes you feel good. It could be music. It could be listening to podcasts. It could be writing. It could be anything your heart desires. Find that thing, do that thing, and make that thing something that consistently brings you out of your dark moments. I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast. I will admit that I appreciate everyone who has given comments, likes, feedback. We're less than a week away from, a little over a week away from Podcast Every Day in August. I will be composing more topics over the next few days because I have been moving mentally and physically in more ways than people realize. But do something and feel good about whatever that something is that you do. And as I always share with you each week, podcasts are uploaded to Spreaker.com. If you're looking to do podcasting, that is my home. I am going to recommend, because I did read an article that's teaching me this. If you're looking at starting out and you don't have equipment and you need something that's simple, convenient, and quick, the podcast that I did on Saturday was done on Anchor. Anchor will literally let you use your phone and record a podcast just like anyone else. So Anchor is a great resource that I would personally recommend. Anchor.fm, they have an app and they have a website. As far as my equipment that I use the Blue Yeti microphone. I've been using it now for a little over 2 years. I don't regret it one bit. And finally, the music intros and outros are thanks to Grimecraft. And if you're looking to either follow us on iTunes, you can go to passpodcast.com and it'll be a button at the bottom. You can just go there and subscribe. Finally, before I forget, shout outs to Google Podcasts for Google for joining the podcast community. There were other Google based apps or Android based apps that are phenomenal that I've heard no one complain about from what I've gathered. But Google Podcasts is a thing. I did have someone check. My podcast is there. So if you are able to download Google Podcasts as an app, check it out. Get the shows, lock in, and support. Until next time, thank you all. I appreciate this. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Next week, we will continue more Big 3 action. Maybe some more trades, NBA talk happening. Preseason will be coming soon, I think. And we'll give you some feedback and updates on the WNBA. So as always, this is The Paz signing out, BT signing out. Y'all take it easy. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to get any information specifically based on the shows, you can go to Spreaker.com/BriTapePodcast or go to www.passpodcast.com. On both of those options, you do have the information related to what topics were talked about, the timestamps for the episode, as well as the specific links related to that specific story. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, The Paz signing out.